Welcome back, listeners, to the Mindful Living podcast with your host, Sana. Today, we have an extraordinary guest whose life story is nothing short of cinematic. A story filled with resilience, creativity, and transformation. Meet Ronika Merl. Listeners, Ronika is an award winning screenwriter, director, poet, and artistic force behind the Wicklow Stories Film Festival. From the mountains of the Himalayas to the hills of Ireland, Ronika's journey spans across continents and experiences, some beautiful, some harrowing, and all deeply inspiring. She has survived unthinkable challenges, including human trafficking and abuse, and yet has emerged as a powerful device uh, and an advocate for storytelling and healing. Buckle up, everyone, because this conversation dives into the raw, real, and resilient essence of survival and thriving through creativity and mindfulness. So, Ronika, welcome to the show, and it's an absolute honor.
Gosh, oh my God. When you say it like that, it really does sound like a journey. Um, it sounds quite cinematic, I think is the word. I don't know if I deserve all that praise, but thank you so much for this really amazing introduction. That was very nice to hear.
Thanks.
Um, yes, thank you so much for having me on. I think the work you do is really important. So I'm just so blessed to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ronika. So, uh, your life journey, it's, really, it's nothing short of remarkable for all of us. So, if you can share your experiences with sexual violence and abuse, how they have shaped your storytelling and creative expression.
So the first question I always ask when I speak to people about, when I speak to people about how can they understand what it's like to have gone through sexual abuse, sexual assault, sexual violence, is to question whether or to question where they see themselves or how they see themselves, the kind of self-image that most of us have, what they think of themselves, what they perceive, who they are as a person. Most people have a pretty normal self-image where they're like, yeah, they have their flaws and they have their little insecurities and they have their little or the little things that they're really proud of. Like they're really proud of how they make a really great lasagna, or they have this really strong moment of pride in their youth when they won a sporting event or something. What what kind of the sexual abuse does, especially if it's perpetrated over a long period of time, and especially if it happens as it did with me at a very, very young age, it destroys that. You do not have a self, because your self and your body and everything that kind of makes you is transposed onto the perpetrator, because your body and your entire existence isn't there for your own self. It becomes a tool for sexual gratification for your abuser. So you're not capable of forming a self. It doesn't exist. You don't have the possibility, you don't have the option of having those little moments of like, oh, I'm really proud of this sporting event that I won. No, you cannot. You cannot be proud of that, because that's something your body did. And whatever your body did is, you don't have a connection to your body, because your body has been used and abused in a certain way. So that's the starting point where most of us who have gone through this really annihilating event have to start from again. We have to start from, oh, but every breath I take isn't actually a horrendous reminder of all the horrible things that happened to me. Every breath I take is actually a really healthy thing and a life-affirming thing. But that's a really long journey to get from my body isn't mine, I don't have a right to exist, and everything that my body does is disgusting to me, to, oh yeah, no, of course I'm fine. I'm very happy with myself, and I'm really healthy, and I'm glad that I exist. that journey is the longest. The longest journey. There's a really good book that I read the first time I kind of realized what had been happening to me. It's called Toxic Parents, and the chapter about sexual abuse in that book is called The Ultimate Betrayal.
Okay.
And it speaks to how parental sexual violence is the ultimate betrayal of humanity.
Yeah.
And I would agree with that. So yeah, the starting point, I think, is a complete loss of self. And the end point to regain is that very normal base layer of I'm a human being. So yeah.
Mm. Also, Ronika, you have described survival, even um, thriving after horrific experience. So, what tools or practices helped you the most in your healing journey? I think, let's start the discussion with how exactly you came out of it. You realized that I need healing, and then the process of discovering or maybe researching about tools or practices to help, the healing.
I started when I was pregnant with my first child. I had my first child quite young. I was 22 when I got pregnant. I was 23 when I had him. Um, so I was quite young. Um, so I didn't know anything really. I wasn't really an adult yet. I had been 2 years out of prostitution. I had come to Ireland. I was living a very kind of normal picket fence life with, a job at Microsoft and a very kind of normal life, but I was very damaged and kind of unhealed at that time. And probably not a great time to have a child. I should have done my healing before I had children, but my children were a significant factor for me to discover that I was not healthy. And the moment I realized, especially that my parents um had done really, really horrendous damage to me, was when I looked at my son when he was born, and I thought, oh, it's so sad. One day he's gonna hate me. And then I was like, oh, why? Why should he hate me one day? But it was such a fixed thing in my mind because I hated my parents so much for everything they had done. My parents, sexually abused me from a very, very young age. Um, both of them. So I was like, yeah, shame. One day he's gonna hate me. And then I thought, but he's my child, he's my son. Why would he hate me? If I'm a good mother, there's no reason for him to hate me. And then it all started unraveling where I was like, oh, maybe children don't grow up to hate their parents. Maybe that's not the normal thing. And then I realized, why do I hate my parents so much? And then of course the answer was, oh, because of everything they did. But I had never connected those two because my thought process had always been, well, it wasn't so bad anyway, and maybe I deserved it, and maybe it could have been a lot worse because I'm still alive and they didn't, beat me every day or whatever. So that's the kind of justification process that you go through. So in that moment when I realized that, oh, okay, the things that happened to me weren't okay. They weren't normal. That's not what happens to everybody. Because that's kind of what you also think is that, oh, if you get attacked or assaulted or something, you think, oh, well, that happens to everybody at some point. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. There's a lot of people in this world who have never experienced anything like this. And that's the norm. That's the normal thing. For this to have never happened, for you to be fine, that's the normal thing. This is not the normal thing. So it really was kind of that moment. And then from then on through writing and through therapy, really, really a lot of therapy, I've kind of been able to kind of come to terms with it all a little bit more. But yeah, I think the credit goes to my children, to want to be a better person and a healthy person and a healed mother to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Beautiful, beautiful, Ronika. And you have worked with the survivors of domestic abuse.
Yes.
So, how do you balance supporting others while continuing to heal yourself? I think that somehow ties with the motherly instincts you have.
The healing healer, or the healed healer, my therapist always says. So, therapy, it gives me energy. Actually, this kind of work, the work I'm doing right now with you, or when I actually do my kind of feet on the ground charity work, or when I speak to other women or other people who have gone through similar things. It gives me a lot of energy, and it gives me a lot of fulfillment. And I think the most important thing is that it gives me a sense of purpose. It gives me a sense that if I've gone through all this and it didn't pour out into something, and it didn't lead to something that helps other people, then what was it really all for? Like, that feels kind of pointless. It feels kind of, it feels almost like an act of selfishness, where I'm like, oh, I understand all this, and I understand these processes, and I've done all this work, but I'm going to keep this to myself. That doesn't feel right. And also just the burden of kind of bearing it alone is made a lot smaller when we share it with others. So it just helps me as well when I speak to other people and see how they're coping and what they're doing. So there's definitely an element of therapy, even in this kind of work, for me.
I agree.
Yeah.
Also, Ronika, talking about your creative side, creativity, it often stems from the deepest, the most raw emotions within.
Yes.
How do you channel difficult memories and emotions into your screenwriting, poetry, and art?
Yeah. I think the moments when it's most raw, as you said, is when it's unintentional, when I don't plan on so I don't tend to sit down and with a purpose sit down and say, oh, I'm going to write a really emotionally devastating scene today. I sit down, I'll have to get some writing done, and then 5 hours later I look up and I'm covered in tears and snot bubbles. I've just been pouring out into the page or onto the canvas. So I think to understand that, letting go of any perceived plans or notions, and kind of an almost automatic writing or automatic painting approach can be really healthy to unlock some things that maybe aren't accessible to you. So I remember one example. I used to just doodle lots of different versions of Medusa.
Oh,
And of course, the kind of the symbolism has shifted quite a lot, which I appreciate quite a lot about Medusa. And it's like, okay, why do I just keep doodling a woman with snakes on her head? And then I took this really big canvas. It's not here because I'm not at home, but normally on all my other podcasts, there's a big Medusa painting in the background, for obvious reasons. And so it just became such an expression of sisterhood to me. And I paint that motif over and over again whenever I feel like there's something, there's anger, there's grief, there's helplessness, there's any kind of deeper emotion that I can't really express with writing. I tend to paint it, and I tend to paint it onto poor old Medusa. So there are so many different ways. Like, I'm a screenwriter, but I find that sometimes the rawest emotions come out when I'm painting, or dancing, or singing. And those are really private acts. They're very, very private, and they don't have to be displayed to the rest of the world. So when we talk about grieving through art, or overcoming through art, that doesn't mean that you have to put it out into an exhibition. that can just be something that's just for you and done very, very privately. You don't ever have to show anybody the result of the grief and the emotions that you've gone through. It's amazing if you can, because you might be able to help other people, but you don't have to. And especially for survivors of sexual violence, exposing themselves again is such a difficult thing to do, which is why so many people won't go to court, won't speak about it ever, won't talk to, authority figures, because they're afraid of exposing themselves, quite literally. And art can do that, but in a very, very private way. So you can expose all the feelings that you've gone through, but you don't have to expose to the rest of the world, right? So I think it's a very powerful tool to just, without thinking, just let go.
Absolutely. I totally agree with what you said about art, music, and dance. These are like, there's no judgment here. It's your frame, your own world, and you're free to express in the way you want. You're not expecting any kind of judgments from it.
Yeah. Dance especially I think for people who have not just people who with history of sexual violence, but also people with eating disorders, people with self-esteem issues, people with body dysmorphia issues. Dancing, again, can be a very private thing, because you're so actually physically in touch with your body, and you have to experience your body. It forces you to experience your body. Dance is a very, very powerful thing.
True. Also, you have lived so many lives, from a Himalayan tribe to a festival in Ireland. So how has this diversity of experiences they have influenced your understanding of resilience?
I have a piece in my first book, I Love You, Dave Taylor, which speaks about resilience, and it speaks about how much I hate the word. I have I have mixed feelings about the word resilience, because resilience implies that the bad things that happen to us are like training. It doesn't kill you, makes you stronger. All that bullshit, which is absolutely not true. What doesn't kill you doesn't make you stronger. What doesn't kill you turns you bitter or it hurts you. And then you have to use a lot of strength to get through that. So resilience is a very, I wish I wasn't. I wish there was nobody on the planet who had to be resilient. Wouldn't it be such a wonderful, beautiful thing if all of us didn't have to be resilient? That would be my absolute dream, if we could just live our lives not ever having to be resilient to that degree. I mean, a little bit of resilience, of course, that you don't go to pieces every time, your car blows a tire or an unexpected bill comes. Okay, that kind of resilience, of course, everybody should have.
Yeah.
The kind of resilience that gets you through a sexual assault. Shouldn't exist in the world. So with that having kind of been said as a kind of, how to get to this point where you're not afraid, but in a healed way? That's a very difficult question. And there's a difference between not being afraid and not being afraid in a healthy way. So not being afraid of anything, which is kind of the same thing as being resilient towards bad things that happen to you. If you don't do this in a healthy way, then that makes you unliving, that makes you unkind, that makes you cynical, that makes you hard. I'm not so sure you would want to do that. I'm not so sure you would want to be that kind of person. What maybe could be a better way to approach resilience is to allow the pain, is to feel the pain, is to be afraid, is to have fear and have doubts and have insecurities and have all these really, really human, basic human emotions about those things, because that's what you're supposed to feel. You're supposed to be afraid when you're in a situation that is dangerous, or that you don't know anything about, or that you feel insecure about. Feel that. That's amazing. That's a beautiful thing. And then to celebrate that you still get insecure, and that you still get butterflies, when you meet someone, and that you still get, insecurities when you walk into a room. And then you consciously and with mindfulness overcome those emotions and work through those emotions and experience them for what they are, which is a human reaction to a human situation. That's the goal. So what the kind of journey that we go through from something bad happening to us, and then we freeze and we become this kind of hardened rock, that's not afraid of anything because the worst thing's already happened to me, back to being a soft, cuddly, mushy, emotionally vulnerable and emotionally available person. That's the part of the journey that a lot of people miss, and that a lot of people maybe should be going on, because that's the real goal, is to become an extra kind person, an extra soft person, an extra non-resilient person. Because I love it every time I cry, because it shows me that I've reached that point of like, oh, I am still capable of holding these emotions and experiencing these emotions without fear of them. They don't overwhelm me, and I don't have to be afraid of them overwhelming me. So that's that's the difference between the bad kind of resilience and the good kind of resilience, I think.
Wow. Wow. That, this is the first time in how so many discussions I've done with guests over grit and resilience, uh, giving up entirely and then starting everything from
Yeah.
this. But this angle, uh, with respect to resilience, I think for the first time I'm discussing this with you. And, thank you for giving this perspective to me as well as the listeners,
Yeah.
regarding resilience. Also, Veronica, uh, before we wrap up, for survivors of abuse or violence, um, finding their voice can be very, very challenging, very challenging. So, what advice would you offer to those who are struggling to speak out or share their stories?
You don't have to. You don't have to. You don't have to tell anybody ever. What you have to do is heal with yourself, by yourself, for yourself. You don't owe anything, anybody. You don't owe the world anything. You owe yourself everything. But if you find yourself at the point where you want to speak out, where it's that it has to be a very powerful call that comes from within. Nobody can tell you from the outside what to do. I'm not here because anybody told me that I should be doing this. No, this is me wanting to do this because I am so tremendously lucky that I am able to speak about it. So that's why I do, because I'm lucky enough to be able to do it. But you don't have to. But if you want to, if you feel like your voice has been suppressed and you want to come into strength, and that's not to say if you never speak out, that's mean that you're not strong. That's not what I mean. So if you never speak out, you have the same amount of strength as somebody who does speak out. The strength is in the healing, not in the speaking. Right?
Absolutely.
So, but if you do want to speak out, if you want to face the person who did this to you, or if you want to just find your voice again and feel like you have something to say and what you say should be listened to, you have to start with yourself.
Absolutely.
Because if you yourself wouldn't listen to you, nobody else will. So you have to be completely at home with yourself. So what I would say is start very, very small. Spend 5 minutes with yourself and tell yourself your own story out loud and listen to yourself. And if that's a very difficult thing for you to do, then only spend a minute, or maybe only spend 30 seconds. Just say one sentence to yourself. The truth, your real truth of what you feel and what you experienced. And then build up to a minute, and then build up to 5, and then build up to 10. And all of a sudden, you've told yourself your own story so many times that you're so secure in the things that you have to say that the next time you say them, you know what you're saying. You know what you're talking about because you have you have built up this foundation of security within yourself. You feel safe with yourself. You feel secure with yourself. You feel like, yes, I have listened to myself, and the things that I say are important. And if they're important to me, they should be important to you, because I'm a human being who's worth listening to. Everybody's worth listening to. So that's what I would say. Don't start out loud in the rest of the world, because that can be quite frightening. That can be quite overwhelming sometimes. But unless you have built a really healthy foundation of being happy with yourself and being secure and safe with yourself, I don't think you should. I don't think you can really authentically speak.
Wow. Very, very, very strong message out there, Ronika. And, it's really, really inspiring, first of all, to have an entirely different take on something which is grossly misunderstood,
Hmm.
and, find the real voice, have that alignment with your body and mind.
Yes.
So thank you for this absolutely enlightening conversation. It's really an eye-opening conversation. In fact,
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been such a pleasure. And yeah, if anybody wants to find me, I'm sure all the information will be in the show notes.
And definitely, I would request if you can mention it to our listeners, and definitely make
Yes.
sure to add them in the.
So my website is ronikamerl.com, where you'll find my contact details if anybody needs to reach out about anything. I'm always here. And I'm also on Blue Sky, which is like the new Twitter thingy app.
Oh, great, great. We'll have all the details in the show notes in there. And listeners, a huge thank to our guest Ronika for sharing her incredible journey of resilience, artistry, and advocacy. Her ability to transform personal pain into powerful stories. It reminds us all that healing and thriving are possible. They are personal, and you can have your healing without even telling your story, through music, through art, through dance. So many artistic forms, even in the face of life's greatest challenges. So if today's episode has moved you or gave you a new perspective, don't forget to rate, review, and share with someone who needs to hear it. And also, don't forget to connect with Ronika. We'll have all the details in the show notes along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, stay mindful and keep living your truth. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.